movies saying, "Don't be like that," and then you've got another woman saying, "Atta girl." So it's like a little mini segment. And I noticed last night they showed it again on TCM, and Barbara Windsor, beloved English comedian, had died, and she obviously died just after they'd finished putting it together for the year, because she died on like December 19th. And they've gone back and recut it and put her in. So she's added to it. But it's always beautiful. And there's always one or two that make me cry, because they did Brian Dennehy from Cocoon died. And then they show Brian, and as they're showing Brian Dennehy, and then Wilford Brimley died from Cocoon. And as they show the two of them, you hear Wilford Brimley going, "Look at it this way, where we're going, we're never going to get ill, and we're never going to die," from Cocoon. And it's just a lovely little, and then they showed Alex Trebek, even though he was an actor, because he was a huge supporter of TCM, and they have him saying in voiceover, "There are so many people who love classic movies." And he's standing there in front of a TCM backdrop, obviously it's some TCM event, and that made me tear up a little bit.
Trebek has been in all sorts of stuff.
He's been, I went back and watched part of the episode of Cheers where Cliff is on Jeopardy, Cliff Clavin, the postman, and I start laughing just thinking about it. And Trebek is so, I mean, you could argue he's playing himself, being the Jeopardy host, which is like, okay, that's a real stretch. But it's amazing how many people cannot play themselves.
I have seen him in X-Files.
Yeah?
He was Man in Black in
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of a funny episode.
Yeah.
Mulder's talking about, it's sort of like a bunch of episodes from different people's perspectives, and everybody's perspective is different. Some of them's funny, some of them's serious, and it's all about people getting abducted and whatever. But Alex Trebek and a wrestler were Men in Black.
Oh, yeah.
And it was pretty funny. But all that being said, hello, my name is Gareth. You're watching the Hub Online Network. We are live in studio with Barbara Roden, journalist, mayor, citizen, all-around awesome person in Ashcroft. We're going to get to sort of the end of the year bonanza, extravaganza. We got a bunch of top 10 lists and things to talk about. So let's get to it. All right. So I'm running the board today. I'm just going to fix something here. No, I just removed it. So there's Barbara. So let's let's go straight into sort of the top 10s for Ashcroft. Now, everybody at home, and I'll put up a title card here in a second. If you want to give us a call, since we are live, you can phone us at 250-457-0538, and you can tell us some of your highlights from 2020, some things that you overcame, that kind of stuff. And but we'll let Barbara start. Oh, we got our first text message. We'll let Barbara start here as I put the phone number up.
All right. Well, great to be here. I actually did some preparation for this, so I prepared two lists of things to talk about. This is sort of some top things to talk about if we have lots of time. And I felt that if we didn't have a lot of time today, really to just go straight to the chase, these were my notes for the other list of what to talk about for the year, because of course this was the year of COVID-19, and that just affected so many things in so many ways that it's impossible to discuss the year without talking about COVID.
That is so true. If you can keep talking, I'm just gonna finish this and then I'll jump in.
And it's funny because I was going back and starting to do the year in review, a series of articles I do every year for the journal. So I sit down in mid-December and I go back to the January, whatever the first issue in January was. And I start going through all the issues, making notes of what was making news in the region. And usually there's a couple of stories that I forget happened in 20, whatever the year is. So I'm, oh, wow, yeah, right, I forgot that happened. And this year going back, it was so bittersweet because the first couple of months, January, February, are pretty much as normal. And I was writing articles because I was doing interviews with people about the upcoming year. So what are you planning for 2020? So Dwight Taves of Thunder in the Valley Raceway was talking about all the great plans they had for the drag racing up at Campbell Hill. And Jack Jays, the chair of the board of Historic Hat Creek, was all excited because in 2019, Historic Hat Creek had their best year ever, and they were really looking to improve on that in 2020. Maccabee fossil beds were going to expand and trails were going to be built there, and the Sea Cadets were all excited. They'd done 2 years of fundraising to go back to Halifax for the 80th anniversary of the Battle of the Atlantic. They were so excited about that trip. And with the benefit of hindsight, of course, I'm reading all these stories and thinking, oh my goodness, because we just had no idea what was right around the corner, and all these plans, so much optimism, so much hope, so much excitement and happiness, and it was just all about to get wiped out.
Well, the monumental shift that happened in the middle of March was just astronomical. I mean, so from the standpoint of, we actually got really lucky because we were both involved with the play from Winding Rivers Arts and Performance Society, and the play was taking place and was shown on the weekend of the 12th and 13th?
12th, 13th of March.
Of March. And so that weekend, we actually had a big hit against us, not having people in the audience because COVID was coming. And then on the 14th and 15th, everything shut down.
Yeah, we had our last performance on Sunday the 15th, and within 48 hours, the hub had shut. And everything in the province was shutting down. Restaurants had to go to takeout only or delivery. Non-essential businesses were told to close. Things like the hub had to close. So we literally escaped by the skin of our teeth. And we were kind of watching this. Well, I was watching this sort of slow motion tsunami heading towards us, because as we were counting down towards opening night, public gatherings were limited to 100, and then we started hearing that people wouldn't be coming because they were worried about coronavirus, and we were just watching it approaching, and I don't think anyone then had any idea how devastating it was going to be and how prolonged.
It's amazing that you say the tsunami thing, because I was talking, lots of people that I talked to, I could see it starting East Coast and just even from the States. It was just coming over, and then it hit sort of Seattle, still wasn't in BC yet, hit Alberta, still wasn't in BC yet, and then it sort of hit us. And we weren't hit as much as we got COVID in British Columbia. We doesn't seem to be hit as bad as other places.
No.
But I think people mainly cite that to be due to the extended or not extended spring break.
We were really fortunate in a way. Quebec had a much earlier spring break than we did. So I think their spring break was
One sec. Hashtag not sponsored, but Diet Coke or Safety Mart. If you want to sponsor my Diet Coke habit for this show, feel free. We're going big time in next year, so hit us up. Sorry, Barbara.
Quebec's spring break was, I think, about 2 weeks earlier than BC's, and they didn't put any lockdowns, no nothing in place in Quebec. And so as COVID hit, and of course spring break, people traveling, lots of people moving around, bringing the coronavirus back with them. And so officials elsewhere and here in BC were able to take a look at what happened in Quebec and say, whoa. And we still had not had our spring break, so that enabled us to sort of put the brakes on before people started going to Disneyland and Hawaii and Mexico and back east to see the family and wherever it is people go on spring break. So that the timing worked in our favor in that respect. And we had, I think, very good leadership. Of course, Dr. Bonnie Henry. And no, has she been absolutely right every step of the way? No, of course not. No one has been. And it really frustrates me when I hear people, we should have done this back in March. Well, it's easy to say that with 9 months of hindsight.
Right.
It's really easy to say that. When it's March and this is exploding around your head and you have to make decisions right now in real time that are going to affect millions of people, wow, that's a hard call to make, and no one is going to be 100% right. I'm just glad we had people like Theresa Tam, like Bonnie Henry, like Anthony Fauci in the United States, who were willing to step up and basically say, you don't have to like me. I am the one who is canceling your spring break, who is telling you you can't go visit people in the care home, because someone needs to step up and do that.
Right.
And the jurisdictions where that didn't happen, and I'm looking at Boris Johnson in Great Britain, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister there, he wants to be liked. He really wants people to like him, which is fine if you're not the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in a pandemic. Because in the job he's in, he has to be the person who says things like, you can't go home and see your family at Christmas. And he was just unwilling to do that for the longest time. And we see the results. Britain, they set a new record yesterday of new coronavirus cases, 59,000, I think, yesterday. And, I don't know, 300 deaths or so. It's huge. And they didn't curb it because no one was willing to step up and make those hard decisions and those hard calls.
The vaccine is coming out. Now, I have sort of I haven't necessarily gone out of my way to distance myself from news for the last couple of days, but what's been happening with the vaccine in the last week?
Somewhat controversially, they took the decision was made in a number of jurisdictions, including here in BC and Ontario. I know of two that did make this decision that over Christmas Day, Boxing Day, they would not have any vaccination clinics. And the reasoning was to give healthcare people a bit of a break, which I totally see. Now, they've faced backlash on that. The coronavirus doesn't take a holiday. We can't take a holiday. And, you know, here in BC, we're only vaccinating maybe 1,000 people a day. So to me, making that decision to cancel it over the Christmas holidays, for 2 days, is a drop in the bucket in terms of the big picture. I think our healthcare workers deserve everything we can give them in the way of breaks and help and time off, because they have been running themselves ragged to look after the rest of us for 9 months now. And I think letting them have Christmas and Boxing Day off is the very least we can do. But they are rolling it out. There's one community up near Dease Lake, for example, now with the second vaccine that's been approved here that does not have to be stored at minus 80 degrees. There are very few facilities. I think in Interior Health, only Kamloops and Kelowna are able to store vaccines at minus 80. The second vaccine it can be stored in a regular freezer, like the kind you or I have at home.
Right.
So that makes it easier to get those to remote communities that don't have, obviously, the minus 80 conditions. So there is a First Nation up in near Dease Lake that is getting the vaccine, and that's going to be the first rural remote community in the province to get the vaccination. So that's a really good sign that if they can do it up there, then other communities that aren't quite so remote as Dease Lake, yes, it will work there too.
Awesome. Now, some of the other COVID-related current events are the numbers from the weekend came out yesterday, and we're below, on average, we're below 500 people now.
Yes.
I think that we were hitting 467, 433, those kind of numbers from Friday to Monday.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I guess we'll find out what the Christmas numbers are in the next week and a half or so. So we'll see if there's a spike there. Are you aware, without saying names, because we're not going to throw anybody under the bus, but are you aware of anybody that had an illegal Christmas gathering?
I honestly haven't heard of any. We're starting to hear there's a couple of politicians, one in Ontario, one in Quebec, who are in hot water because one of them is in the Caribbean right now with his wife on a holiday. The other one, I forget where he is, somewhere similarly warm and tropical that is not Canada. And of course, all governments everywhere have been telling everyone no non-essential travel. And, you know, I don't care how overworked and tired you are, a trip to the Caribbean is not essential travel at this point in time. And I think, you know, especially if you're a politician, you're a cabinet minister in the Ontario government, you really need to be leading by example. And that is not heading off to the Caribbean for a holiday right now. That is, you know, regretfully canceling your plans, as so many other people have had to do, and you stay here. It's as simple as that. So I was going to go up to Prince George to see my son. I'd love to spend Christmas with my only child, and didn't do that. We stayed here. His box of presents arrived yesterday, so he FaceTimed, and I watched as he opened them all, and he played the guessing game where I think he successfully guessed all but one of them. So either that
You
means
got to up your game, Tim.
No, I've got to up my game because I'm obviously way too predictable in the gifts I send him because he was able to nail every single one. So I think I'm going to have to start putting them in big boxes or something. Or
You should just write toaster on the side of every present.
exactly, yeah. So that's what we did. That was Christmas because it's a day we can have Christmas in July or whenever it's safe, but not now.
Now, as a top 10 thing, one of the top 10 things that COVID did for the Hub Online Network was it really gave us, not that we didn't have a purpose before, but it really gave us a purpose. When COVID started, we hit the ground sort of running, and we did a daily show for, I think, March, April, May, about 2 months straight. With daily updates as things shut down in Ashcroft and Cache Creek and what the new numbers were and when things started reopening, that kind of thing. So that really gave us which morphed into the news show that we have now twice weekly, which thank you everyone for watching and sharing and commenting and whatever. We really appreciate that. Tell your friends, everybody subscribe, like, etc. So that's sort of like a positive thing that came out of COVID, despite the fact that COVID is not a positive thing. What's that term, though, for journalists? When there's bad news, it's good news?
Well, if it bleeds, it leads.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah.
But beyond that, well, it was really interesting seeing the growth of the pandemic across the world in our backyard. It was nice to see things start opening up in phases.
Yes.
And it was really cool seeing a lot of the things that people did to pivot. I think that the main example that comes to my mind is the bakery in Ashcroft and how, despite the fact that they couldn't have their doors open, they were still selling the things that people couldn't get, like flour and yeast and all that kind of stuff. I myself bought yeast and flour off of that. So that was one really good example of watching how people can pivot.
And I mean, it tested a lot of small businesses, especially in our small communities that don't have, they don't have online sales, for example. So maybe this was the impetus for a couple of businesses to say, hey, maybe it's time that we moved into online sales. Because that's one of the things about small communities that a lot of people really like, not only the people who live in that community, but who visit, because you don't get all the cookie cutter stores that you get in a big city. You don't get all the chain stores. You've got the individual, unique mom and pop businesses that you can only find in Ashcroft, in Cache Creek, in Clinton. And so that's part of the attraction. And so a lot of these businesses, of course, they don't do online sales. Because it's a small operation and they don't have the time. So I think that's something going forward to help our businesses with is various organizations coming in and sort of helping businesses to know how to pivot like that, how to set up an online presence so they can ship things to BC, to the rest of Canada, to the world. Because there have to be people who've come to our communities who've shopped at one of our little unique shops like the Caribou Jade shop, like Nature's Gifts in Ashcroft, and who go back home and like, I remember that great soap we got from that little store in Ashcroft? We've just used the last one. Well, you can go online and order soap to your heart's content. And that is a way to help our businesses to stay in business so that they can still serve us as well.
Talking about small businesses and current events, the Caribou Jade Shop Jade Boulder has been returned. Congratulations back to the Jade Shop. I heard that it has a few stings and scratches on it, but beyond that, it is returned. It was stolen, a week ago?
19th of December.
Yeah, so it's a pretty quick turnaround. So congratulations to the RCMP and to everyone that helped sort of find this thing and bring it back home. I saw the picture of
Heidi
hugging it. So
that was such an awesome picture. And, it was a well-planned theft. And they obviously knew what they were doing. They had the excavator, they had the flat deck, they'd obviously scoped it out. They picked a time, which was, I think they started around 10 o'clock at night, 10:30 at night on a Saturday. So they picked a time when they didn't think too many people would be around. So I'm guessing, because I've watched way too many crime procedurals on TV, that they thought they'd have a lot more time to make their getaway. Then they thought no one was going to notice this was gone until maybe the next time someone came to open up the store. So they must have figured they had 8 or 10 hours. Of course, what happened is as they are driving away with the dust from where they've hacked it out still hanging in the air, 2 local residents who were coming home to Ashcroft from Kamloops were there at the junction, saw this thing go by them, looked and went, that was the boulder. That was the boulder from the jade shop. And they drove past just to make sure that their eyes weren't deceiving them, and they phoned it in right away. And not only, this is what makes it such a great small town story, not only did they phone 911, which was obviously the right thing to do, they had Bill Elliott's phone number. One of them knew Bill. They had his cell phone number at the jade shop. So they're on the phone to Bill at midnight going, Bill, yeah, your boulder's just been stolen from outside your shop. So the owners of the shop knew within 5 minutes. So there goes the criminals with their 8 to 10 hours of lead time. Now suddenly there's someone following them, the owners know and the police know within 5 minutes. So, and then of course, now it's all over, it's over social media, it's in the journal, it's on global news, it's everywhere. They're probably going, what have we done? Whose idea was it to steal this boulder that's now everywhere?
Now the boulder was returned, but were the people caught?
There have been no arrests.
Okay.
There are suspects, but no arrests.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's, you know, I think a lot of people were surprised by the outpouring of emotion about the theft of this boulder, because at the end of the day, it's a 2,800-pound hunk of jade. But it meant so much to so many people, and the news that it has come back, has been found, has just elicited so much genuine joy from so many people. And it's the good news story that we, in some ways, didn't want because we didn't want the boulder stolen. But the fact that it's been found intact is just the good news story that we needed to end 2020 on.
Yep. That's, so let's go back to our top 10 lists of things that happened in Ashcroft over the last year. Now, one of the fun things was the Twilight Zone. Yeah, you don't think that it happened in 2020 because it feels like 2020 was, or the beginning of 2020 anyway, was 4 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
But the Twilight Zone did happen in 2020.
Yes.
You were heavily involved in that one.
Yeah.
I got to be a production assistant. I just got to sit in my car and watch the Central get painted pink. So that was good times. But so what?
I think it's peach.
And now you got to watch them actually build the church. So tell us a little bit about your experience with the Twilight Zone.
Well, I mean, of course, the church, the replica of Zion United was built literally a stone's throw, if I could throw a baseball, which I can't, from where I sit and work in the journal office. So I was watching this being built over the course of, I don't know, 10 days, a week to 10 days it took them to build it. And it was just amazing to see it go up and in parts, and suddenly there's Zion United Church right across from my office. And of course it was all freshly painted. And then in order to make it look realistic, they had to go in and distress the building. So people are up there on scaffolding with, I don't know, sandpaper and sandblasters, roughing it up and chipping the paint and scratching the paint and making it look weathered and worn, which was just really weird. It's something I hadn't thought of. And then watching all the, the set dressing, making the street look in different states for different parts of the filming, and to see the filming go on, and people would walk down the street. All right, cut, go again. Cut, go again, and it's just the same thing over and over again. And I was involved in one of those scenes, and yes, it is a lot of hurry up and wait. You're doing a lot of standing around. What was really weird was it was a pretty big budget production, and there you had people around the set, there to adjust people's costumes and hair and stuff. And so I'd be standing there, and suddenly I'd feel someone at the back of my head, and I'd look, and it's one of the hair guys, and he's just sort of fluffing up my hair and putting some product in it because it was a little bit damp, and so, we're standing there for a long time, and it was just like, whoa, that's weird. But it was a really interesting look at how much goes into the making of a show. Because I saw firsthand how long they were here, how long it took them to put it together for a 28-minute show. So now I watch TV with a different eye because I'm watching a TV show and I'm thinking, they had to find that location, they had to dress the set, they had to get the lights, they had to do the takes over and over again for a 7-second shot.
Right.
And that took them how many days to set it up and then a day of filming.
And tear it down. Like it's not.
Then take down. So it was really fascinating. I've been a film and TV geek from way back, so to get this firsthand look was absolutely fantastic. And what it did for the community and for Cache Creek in terms of economic stimulus. And again, at the time I wrote that a lot of the business owners I was talking to were saying coming in January, February, which of course are dead months, it was a real shot in the arm for them because it was tiding them over until the summer tourist season, the busy season, which of course never happened this year.
Having worked on several movies myself, the one thing that always gets me when I watch TV shows or movies now is I know how many people are behind the camera watching the actors do whatever they're doing. And I just, other than, I suppose now with COVID, everybody's separated. Did you hear about the Tom Cruise freak out?
Yeah.
So people are separated more now, and maybe there's not as many people behind the camera as there used to be. But that's just the one thing that always picks at me whenever I'm watching a show.
And it's, to me too, I mean, if it's a big crowd shot, if it's, two people walking down the street, and you've got people in the background going into stores and looking, walking past, reading a newspaper, whatever they're doing, that's one thing, and of course there are, for every person you see on the screen, there's probably 10 people at least standing where you can't see them watching. Now when I see a really intense scene where there's maybe a close-up on an actor and they're doing a really emotional scene, like they're really giving everything because it's a big dramatic scene, realizing that I can't see them, but the actor who is doing this can see 25 people standing there holding boom mics, holding lights, holding, whatever they're doing. It makes it even more extraordinary that they can, at least on a stage, you've got the audience, but you can't really see them because of the lights. On a movie set or a TV set, everyone's right there in your face.
That's what I like about the sort of the actor explosions. The best one that comes to mind for that example is Christian Bale on the set of Terminator Salvation. People at home, if you haven't seen this, go check it out on YouTube.
Is that the phone incident?
Was it on? Was it the phone, or was it just he was doing something as Christian Bale was in that emotional scene, and this guy moves a piece of rigging or something, which catches his eye, which takes him out of the moment.
Yeah.
And it's anyway. You're right. With all those people just watching him do his thing, I haven't been an actor on a show for a long time, but it's
tough.
It's very distracting.
Yeah, it is.
But let's move on from. Is there anything else about Twilight Zone?
No, just that it was great and it was fun to see the finished product. After seeing little bits of it being filmed here and there, to see how it all came together into a half hour of television was just amazing.
Wonderful. Oh, and where can people watch that right now? If you wanted to go see that episode,
it's been airing on CITY, so City TV. I think if you go to the City TV website, you might be able to see it there.
Cool. So we have a top 10 things from the Cache Creek Village for 2020. So let's start with 9 things. Sorry, 9 things. Let's start with number 9. With assistance from Northern Development Initiative Trust and the BC Interior Community Foundation, we established the Cache Creek Community Fund. The fund will provide charitable donations for Cache Creek and area groups and individuals for years to come. Mm-hmm. So that was a big one that took a long time to sort of set up. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing where they are going to take some money. They're going to get that money matched from the NDIT, put it into an account, and then they get to take the interest out and use the interest for charitable organizations within Cache Creek. Yep. So that's
and the nice thing about the community fund is that it's a legacy fund. You can only use the interest each year. You can't to dip into the capital. But the capital can be added to. The money that Cache Creek put in that's being matched by NDIT to set it up is not the be-all and end-all. That's not it. It's not closed now. So if someone in the community wanted to set up a bequest, for example, for when they pass, and say leave a certain amount to the Cache Creek Community Fund, they can do that. And that gets added to it, and then of course the interest goes up accordingly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, so that's one of the reasons that these funds do get set up, is because you have people who want to make donations to the community that will live on in perpetuity. I mean, if you give a cash donation for something, it gets spent. If you give a cash donation to something like the community fund, where it goes into this fund and it stays there in perpetuity, generating interest, then that is a legacy that will continue forever, potentially. Right. So it's a really good way of benefiting your community for a longer term, rather than just giving some money and saying, oh, here, make improvements at the park or do something with it. This way, it can go to keep generating funding for the community for a long time.
Right. No, it's I'm glad that they actually got that passed, because it was again, it was a long time sort of.
It took them several months to talk through all the details.
That's pretty cool. Number 8, Ashcroft-Cache Creek and Clinton began working together towards hiring a shared bylaw enforcement officer. The 3 communities hope to build on the success of the transit service collaboration with this joint initiative. So that was pretty cool.
That is really cool.
I'm looking forward to being able to say, that guy's breaking the bylaw. Get him.
Well, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, so we'll know where the calls are coming from, right? Even if they try and be anonymous. No, I think a lot of municipalities have noticed complaints going up this year, and the example I give is barking dogs. If your next door neighbors have dogs that bark all day and you're at work all day, you don't hear them.
Right.
With people being at home because of COVID, they've heard the neighbors barking dogs and it's driving them up the wall. So now they complain about it. So there have been more complaints. One of the criticisms leveled at small municipalities like Ashcroft-Cache Creek, Clinton is, well, why do you bother having bylaws if they don't have any teeth, if there's no one to enforce them? Well, the answer to that is you have bylaws, because then if something does go against the bylaw, at least you do have that mechanism in place. And the example I give is, before Ashcroft put in a water bylaw about, alternating days, odd and even days. That's when you water, between May 1st and September 30th. And then if the power goes out, you go to stage 4, so no water usage. We have to save it for emergency use. My son said to me, well, before you put that in, what would have happened if there'd been like a major power outage? Could you have just told people we're going to stage 4? And I said, no, because we didn't have a bylaw.
Right.
We could have asked people nicely, but that's it. Now we have a bylaw that can be enforced. So then the next piece of the puzzle is, well, who enforces it? And in our community, it is our CAO. And well, the CAO is really busy with tons and tons of things, and they can't, follow up on every complaint to the full extent that we'd like. They follow up on every complaint. How far they take it varies, because they can take up a lot of time. So having a bylaw officer to deal with that will free up a lot of staff time in the 3 communities. My
understanding of this particular thing is that this is sort of the first part is sort of a trial to see if it's something that will change things in the area. So if it's absolutely necessary. What's the first trial period? A year, 6 months?
2 years.
Okay.
And then communities can assess and can give notice that they'd like to withdraw if they feel it's not living up to what they wanted, it's not accomplishing what they wanted it to accomplish. But I think it was felt that was a good, fair time to have it in place before you make any judgments.
Right.
So we're going to see how it goes. They're going to be working 4 days a week, 2 days a week in Ashcroft, 1 day each in Clinton and Ashcroft. And we're expecting it to be busy at the beginning, because there's going to be, now when people know that there's a bylaw officer enforcing bylaws, we expect that there will be a number of complaints and inquiries directed at that person. And then over time, it's going to fall off.
Is this a thing where this guy's like RoboCop, where he just sort of drives around and decides you are breaking a bylaw? Or is this a thing where someone phones in, makes a complaint, and then this person goes out and deals with it?
We're expecting that that's what it's going to be like, especially at the beginning.
Okay.
Because right now our bylaws are complaint driven. When someone says, hey, this person is doing X, which is against bylaw Y, that's when it gets investigated. We don't have people driving around going, oh, look at that.
He's not going to Judge Dredd it where he's...
I would hope not.
Well, good to know.
Yeah.
So, number 7, the Cache Creek Volunteer Fire Department received even more funding than they asked for toward wildfire protection equipment and training from the Fire Chiefs Association of BC.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool. This was maybe a month ago, I want to say, a month and a half ago, where Damien went in and he made a presentation where he tried on, where he showed.
Oh, this is something. This is different.
Oh, this is different.
They got first of all, their Assistant Chief Damien Couture presented and said they needed more SCOTs, which are SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, the packs they wear on their backs, and just explaining how the ones they have now are older. They need refurbishing a lot. It's hard to get the parts. The masks don't fit properly. They're difficult to clean now, especially with COVID protocols. And so council made the decision to fund the purchase of 4 more sets now, and I believe 4 more next year. And they'd also applied for money from BC Fire Chiefs Association for structural protection or wildfire protection.
Okay.
And so they got funding for wildfire protection, which enabled them to get a custom-built trailer.
Yep.
Which they're going to fit out with shelves and container units. And they also got hoses and fittings and sprinklers so that in the event of a wildfire, they can take the trailer to a site and set up a protection line. In 2017, they borrowed or were loaned from the Office of the Fire Commissioner a portable sprinkler system, which when the fire looked like it had gone through Cache Creek and it kind of swept around over towards Deadman and it looked like it was coming back towards the west, they set up this line of sprinklers up by Lopez Creek at the top end of Stage Road. And so it's similar to that kind of a unit, only, now it's Cache Creek's. And they can use it, deploy it where they want, when they want, and so it will be very handy in the event of another Elephant Hill wildfire where you need to have the line of sprinklers set up in a place that doesn't have any fire hydrants, for example, like the end of Stage Road, there's a fire hydrant and then that's it.
Right.
So that's really exciting news for Cache Creek, and they got a lot of bang for their buck. I'm really impressed.
No, that's all. I thought that was attached to the previous amount asked.
No,
that
was a separate ask.
So.
Yeah.
Number 6, thanks to the over $1.4 million in funding from Canada-British Columbia Infrastructure Program, a major upgrade to the sewer system was completed. 2 lift stations were replaced and the treatment plant building got some much-needed upgrades. These upgrades will minimize future corrosion damage now that the process tanks are covered and ventilation has been added. In addition, several new staff safety initiatives were implemented. So that's, I used to live down right beside the sewage treatment plant, and I did see lots of work going on. So that's pretty good. Number 5, a large new residential subdivision began development. Full build out. It will have over 70 homes. Where's that going?
That, I think, is the one that's going up at the top end of Stage Road and Woodburn.
Yes.
And so what is going to happen is both those roads come to an end right now. They're parallel to each other, obviously. And what's going to happen is they're both going to then continue on into a new subdivision, which I believe is going to be manufactured home parks.
Okay.
Or manufactured home park. That's it. They're going to be manufactured homes in this park.
Right.
So that's going to add another 60 to 70 residential properties to that top end of Cache Creek.
The Campbell Hill landfill started accepting waste after several years of delays. So that's good. And then I think that they're just expecting more now, eventually once it's an official reopening of the landfill, which hasn't happened yet.
Well, it's not a reopening. The old landfill, the Cache Creek landfill, is closed forever. It closed in December of 2016. And the Campbell Hill landfill is above the Cache Creek landfill.
Okay.
And it's a completely new landfill.
Maybe reopening is not the term.
No, so they're going to have like a grand opening.
There you go.
They've had a soft opening, but they haven't been able to have any kind of ribbon cutting or official thing because of COVID. So
right.
it just quietly started accepting garbage.
Number 3, thanks to great record keeping and diligent reporting, the village received 92% of flood response costs back from the province, totaling $374,881.64.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all right.
That's good, yeah.
Especially with the amount of work that they put in to throw all that riprap back in.
Yeah, and the digging, the excavating, and yeah, that's a lot of man hours and a lot of manpower and equipment and work and materials. Yep.
Number 2, we dealt with almost 2.5 months of flooding with just a few short breaks. We learned new ways of flood protection. The Hesko baskets were great to work with. More thanks than words can express go out to our public works crew, emergency support services, volunteers, members of council, the City of Kamloops, and many, many more who helped out under extremely trying circumstances. Mm-hmm. So it did feel like the flooding did go on much longer than it has in previous years. It was almost a never-ending flood season, it felt like.
July long weekend, there was more flooding. Someone sent me a picture of the Cache Creek Fire Hall on July 2nd with, it's sort of knee-deep in muddy water. And, this is July, and we've sadly grown accustomed to this sort of picture happening in April and May. July? No. That was just extraordinary.
As a mayor and an outsider of Cache Creek looking in, do you think that there's a way to fix it, or...
That's the $1 million question.
And make sure you look at the camera, so if Mayor Talarico is watching, he knows.
No. It's one of those. There are so many moving parts. As soon as you start dealing with waterways, you just open up a world of pain, because you're dealing with so many different levels of government and so many different components of those different levels of government. And whatever you do within your own village boundaries, if the river runs from here to here, those are your boundaries. Well, it doesn't just start and stop at your boundaries. It continues on either side. So anything you do to your section is going to potentially affect upstream and downstream from you.
Right.
So that's why you can't just go in willy-nilly and do what you want. And that's why it takes such an agonizingly long time, and why people get so frustrated. Because there are no easy or cheap solutions. I think something that is frustrating a lot of small communities like Cache Creek is that the expenses you have in the immediate moment, the creek is overflowing, we need to do something right now. 100% of those costs, eligible costs, are recoverable. Afterwards, when the floodwater has receded and you look at what now needs to be done in terms of diking or rebuilding retaining walls, you only get 80% of that funding.
Right.
You still have to spend the money. So if a village like Cache Creek spends $500,000 to do this work after the flooding, they can only claim 80% of that back. They have to come up with the rest themselves. For small communities, that is huge.
Yeah.
Because my math is really shaky, but you're talking $100,000. They spend $500,000, the village has to come up with $100,000. That's a lot of money for a small community to come up with.
It's amazing how all these things in Cache Creek, like, let's just say that's a legit number that you just said. All of these things that deal with water in Cache Creek are $100,000. Looking at you, Pool.
Well, I pulled out a nice round figure because I'm not very good at math, and I figured I could probably quickly in my head work out the 80% there and not look like an idiot.
No, I know that you were just picking it. I'm just being facetious.
And that is an issue with small communities, is dealing with the remediation, because a lot of people say, well, instead of spending all this money after the fact, why don't they take that money and spend it before there's flooding to maybe prevent the flooding? And it's a valid way of looking at it.
Right.
But it's then you're asking the provincial government to come up with hundreds of thousands of dollars to prevent a hypothetical thing that might happen, instead of asking them to come up with the money to pay for something that did happen. They'd rather wait until something does happen and say, okay, here, fix it and we'll pay you, rather than say, okay, we'll give you the money up front to do the work to prevent this thing that might not ever happen again.
Right.
So.
Number 1. As with most areas of the world, COVID-19 brought significant changes to how we do even the most ordinary activities. So their number one is COVID-19.
Yep.
Fair enough.
It's, the most ordinary activities. Plexiglass. Who knew? I wish I'd invested in a plexiglass firm. Shares in February, that and Zoom and toilet paper. The three
The
things.
Zoom.
Zoom,
can't
toilet
believe
paper,
toilet
and
paper.
plexiglass. I wish I'd invested in those futures back in February because plexiglass manufacturers just went crazy because suddenly everyone needed plexiglass at their pay stations or workstations or counters or whatever they had. And so it's little things like that again really hit small businesses because in order to reopen, small businesses had to install the hand sanitizer dispensers and buy the hand sanitizer, and those things are a few $100s per unit.
Yep.
And you don't just buy the hand sanitizer in little, 500 ml jars from the pharmacy. You're buying the great big industrial sized tubs, which are expensive. You're having to buy the plexiglass and get that installed in your counters. You're having to buy gloves. You're having to buy masks. You're having to buy extra special cleaners that will deal with bacteria and viruses. You have to be cleaning more often, so now that's more staff time. If you're, say, a hairdresser shop, you have to now allow more time between bookings so that people can do the cleaning and disinfecting before the next person comes in. So now you've cut down on the number of people you can see during a day.
Right.
So it's just all these knock-ons, which, and it's little things, lots of little things that add up to a lot of money, whether it's a local government, whether it's a business, whether it's a restaurant. Everyone had to dig deep and find the money to pay for these extra protections.
What are your thoughts on the sliding scale of rules and regulations to keep businesses open?
You mean different rules for different businesses?
No, I mean so one day it's you have to have these things in place, and then the next day they've either taken some of those things away or added new things, and businesses having to keep up with the changing rules to keep their business open in COVID.
It's a really tough balance because you don't want to necessarily have a cookie cutter, one size fits all for every business everywhere in the province, because that doesn't take into account that the vast majority of our cases are in Fraser Health. So if you're making a business in Vanderhoof do the same thing that you're making a business in Surrey do, the people in Vanderhoof are going, well, why? We have hardly any cases of COVID up here, and you're making us do the same thing that they're doing down in Surrey and New Westminster and Burnaby and White Rock. So I think they're trying to be flexible. They're trying to show some understanding for the different circumstances. But that said, I would find it very difficult to be a small business owner because, yes, you are basically checking the rules every day. It's the same with local governments. We're having to check the rules every day because earlier this year, a ministerial order came out about council meetings and said you could close them to the public, but you can open them to the public if you feel you can do it safely. Otherwise, you're fine to be closed. And then in December, a notice came down saying they have to be closed. You cannot admit the public. So you are literally kind of, okay, well, what are the rules today? And that's really tough for a small business to try and keep on top of that.
Well, it's a really good thing that Cache Creek and Ashcroft have the Hub Online Network to record their council meetings and put it out to the public. So if you have any questions for our local politicians during these village council meetings, you can always email us at honjournalist@ashcrofthub.com. And we will keep them to account, especially the mayors.
Feet to the fire.
Now we have the top 10s from Ashcroft. So number 14 actually, and it says, "Hi Gareth, we have narrowed it down to 14. The list was in excess of 20. So Merry Christmas, see you next year."
So we gave you a bonus.
Thank you,
Christmas
Ashcroft.
bonus, yeah.
So 14, completion of the water treatment plant mitigation efforts for next freshet and separator.
Yes, we found out this was the first freshet that our new water treatment plant has dealt with. It dealt with it very well. No boil water notices, which is wonderful. Last couple of years we've had boil water notices for weeks on end during the freshet. And of course, this year's went on much longer than usual and was much more turbid. One thing we did find, however, was because of the increased turbidity and the length of the freshet, in terms of the flooding, we need to install a sand separator to keep the sand from getting into the water treatment plant, getting into the machinery, and literally clogging up the works. So it caused, caused the crew some issues this year. So they dealt with it, and we found out that the simple solution was to get a sand separator, so that's going in, and we hope to have that in place and operating for the next freshet.
Wow.
Yeah.
13, subdivision development and servicing and signage bylaws.
Yes.
So that's all right. One of the things that I want to do, full disclosure for everybody at home, and this is not a sympathy thing, I have rediscovered that I have cancer for a second time. So I'm not sure what my next year looks like with this particular job. However, assuming that I'm still working, what I want to do is cover council meetings and what council and villages are doing more in depth. So what I want to do is go more in depth on what these bylaws are, what they mean for you, and how that's going to affect you. So hopefully in 2021, that's something I'm still able to do moving forward. So just keep an eye out for that in 2021. So that is subdivision development and servicing and signage bylaws. Number 12, installation of generator for number 2 pump station.
Yes, that's the one leading up to the Mesa. And residents of the Mesa, I'm one of them, will remember in July of 2017, we lost power in all of Ashcroft, about 1:30 in the afternoon on July 7th when the fire started, and we did not get the power back. It came back in phases starting on Saturday, July the 8th, but we had no idea when the power was coming back. I was down at the fire hall manning the information center all that Saturday, and that was the number one question we got.
Right.
One was, when is the power coming back on? And the other question that we got a lot was, how are the reservoirs holding up? And the answer was, we don't know when the power is coming back. BC Hydro is telling us anything up to a week. Reservoirs, not good. It's July. One of our council members was going around handing out the notices to people saying, we're on evacuation alert. And people were watering their lawns in the middle of a Friday in July. Mm-hmm. So we were telling people, stop watering. Don't use it for anything. Don't flush the toilet if you don't have to. Don't take a shower. Don't fill your dishwasher or your pool. And we ran out of water on the Mesa in the reservoir up there and we had no way of pumping it. With no power, we had no way of pumping more water up to that reservoir. So once it ran dry, which it did around 3 in the afternoon on the Saturday, that was it. We had no more water. People who live up there might have noticed it when you come up the hill. On the left-hand side, there's a little gravel pull-out area. There was a big bladder there filled with water. And that was brought up there by the fire department because we had no water in that reservoir. If there'd been a fire on the Mesa, the fire that we're fighting it with comes up on the trucks and from that bladder.
Right.
So it was established that we needed a backup generator for that pump station to get water up to the Mesa reservoir in the case of an extended power outage. And it was it's not a generator you can go buy off the shelf at Home Hardware. It's pretty big industrial, tens of thousands of dollars. Our Director of Public Works, Brian Benowith, happened to spot one that was exactly what we needed at a really, really good price. So that was in the budget anyway, so we went ahead, got it, it's installed, ready to go.
Awesome.
It's one of those things you hope you never have to use.
Now,
really,
as you previously just stated, you live up on the Mesa. This is a thing for the Mesa. Conflict of interest?
No.
I'm just kidding. Okay. Number 11, flooring and paint at Community Hall.
Yes, we put in new flooring at the Community Hall and painted it. People who might remember it beforehand know it was kind of a bilious yellow color, which was not terribly attractive.
I'll have to go check it out because I didn't know that you guys were doing this.
It was, and now we've put in new flooring, really nice flooring, and it's painted a very soothing pale gray color. I'm sure interior designers have a word for it that doesn't sound like pale gray, but that's what I call it because I'm not an interior designer. And it's very soothing. In fact, I was there for the Christmas hampers, and someone who uses it a fair bit said that she called it soothing.
Wow.
Which I thought was a good description. That's how I felt. So refreshed and refurbished, and yeah, for a building, part of which was built in 1888, it's looking pretty good.
Awesome. Facilitating Twilight Zone filming, which we already talked about. Establish collaboration with Cache Creek and Clinton to provide a bylaw enforcement for our communities to begin the spring of 2021, which is interesting because that is... Oh, no, that's not the same. Hang on, let me just double check this. Number 9. No, theirs was number 8. Almost the same number with Cache Creek on that one. That would have been serendipitous. Okay, so that was number 9. We already talked about that. Paid off borrowing of debt 15 years early.
Yes.
We are debt free.
We're debt free. We had 2 loans. We went to the people of Ashcroft and asked for permission to borrow $420,000, I think, for our new primary fire engine, which we got in December of 2016. And then we asked for permission to borrow up to $4.2 million to fund our portion of the new water treatment plant. In the end, we only had to borrow $1 million. We asked for permission to borrow up to 4.2. We borrowed $1 million. So between those 2 debts, we owed about $1.3 million. They were both scheduled to be paid off over the next 15 years. We budgeted into the budget for every year for our 5-year plan about $120,000 a year in debt servicing. So we knew that was baked into the budget, $120,000 a year. And our CFO, Yogi Bala, began several months ago, before COVID, talking about how he thought that this year that was something he wanted to do, would be to pay them off, so we were debt-free. And when COVID hit, I thought, well, that's it. That's out the window. And he said, no, I'm still planning. And so this year, it was November, I believe, we paid off those 2 debts 15 years early, and we are debt-free.
Did he just like move numbers around and...
It was good fiscal planning. It was good use of money that we had in reserves.
Yeah.
Rather than have to borrow the full amount, he was able to delay the actual taking out of the loan, because of course as soon as you trigger the loan, you start the interest payments going. And so we were able to put off actually having to borrow the money that we borrowed. And so it was just really excellent fiscal management, and it's really nice to be debt-free.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Number 7, asset management with 2 exclamation points. I gotta say, I do like Yogi's map and the way that he's used all of the assets. I'm doing I have a sort of pseudo second job with the Film Commission right now. So I'm going through a bunch of pictures and like explaining what's in the picture. But I have to go to the TNRD map, which is very similar to Yogi's. So having seen Yogi's in the past, it kind of has helped me maneuver my way through this map through the TNRD. So that's it's pretty cool that he was able to do all that.
It's a fantastic made in Ashcroft solution, saved us a lot of money, and it's a model. I won an award, UBCM, for excellence in asset management, and City of Richmond, and City of Richmond was one that didn't even make the short list, and we got the honorable mention in 2nd place.
Right.
So it's really a lesson to other small municipalities that just because you're a small municipality doesn't mean you can't do these things that are huge world-class projects. And asset management is an absolute must for every municipality everywhere in Canada if you have any hope of getting any infrastructure funding. And to do that usually costs hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And this has saved us a ton of money, and it's tailored to the village of Ashcroft.
He was looking at helping out other municipalities with the same thing. Did you know if he's been approached?
Starting with Cache Creek, yes.
Okay.
He did a presentation to Cache Creek, and that collaboration has started.
Okay, cool. Number 6, opened pool, museum, legacy park, arenas, curling rink, despite COVID. That's
that was
all right.
a really big one. A lot of pools in small communities didn't open. Like I'm talking communities that have outdoor pools like ours that only open for part of the year. A lot of small communities just didn't open them because it was just too onerous. They were too worried about COVID. Yep. Museums were the same. A lot of museums didn't open this year. a lot of I think most arenas have reopened, but of course taking different approaches as to who can actually use them.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of rules around, and what I mean by that is like village-specific rules. So something that you guys are specifically enforcing.
It's
Not necessarily bad. I'm just saying like.
every municipality is having to look at what user groups want to use their arena, and what user groups they're comfortable having in the arena.
Right.
So, for example, we're allowing the kids in to play, but it's skills and drills. Excuse me, and they're governed by sports bodies in BC, which say these are your COVID safety protocols that you have to follow.
Right.
And so we were comfortable letting the kids in to do the skills and drills. So the curling rink, having that reopened, well, it's closed now, but having that reopened earlier this year was great to have it, see that being used. They doubled their membership at the curling club. Curling in Ashcroft goes back 140 years, probably.
Right.
So long history of curling, so it's nice to see that continuing.
Awesome. Number 5, curling club upgrades.
Well, yeah, we upgraded, put a new chiller in, much smaller, much better, much quieter, apparently, and yeah, much safer.
Cool. See, we'll get some footage of that. Number 4, strategic plan 2021-2022. Mm-hmm. Which you can check out the presentation from that on the Hub Online Network. It was a live event that we did a couple weeks ago. When was that?
That was by end of November.
Yeah. So you can go check that out on our Facebook page. Number 3, technology upgrades enable video conferencing.
Yeah. Again, with the pandemic, this is another thing that local governments had to struggle with is how do you let the public be at your meetings when the public can't be at your meetings?
Right.
So it was something a lot of small communities really struggled with because they've never had to worry about filming. A lot of communities have no filming of their meetings at all. If you're not there physically in person, you don't see the meeting. So we are very fortunate to have the Hub Online Network to come in and film or live stream. Don't look so pleased with yourself there, Gareth. No, we're very fortunate to have the Hub Online Network. But it's one thing to have someone to come in and film. You have to have that technology to enable that to happen. And with people now zooming in, we've had very few live presentations at council. People who want to be delegations phoned it in, quite literally, and we did not really have the technology to facilitate that. So we've gone ahead and enabled our council chambers to be used for that kind of presentation to minimize the risk to people coming here and still allow them to take part in the meetings.
What do you think, as a side note to us and filming council meetings, what do you think of our new way of filming it? Because you watched the one in Cache Creek, to do the Cache Creek write-up. So what do you think of the new way of filming?
I think it takes a little bit of getting used to when you're not used to seeing it. The sound is can be a little bit fuzzy.
We're working on that.
But I find it, depending, if I really need the crystal clear sound, I'll use a computer where I can put headphones on.
Right.
And that's much better than, interestingly, my computer at work, the sound is much better if I listen to it on a laptop.
Oh.
If I set it up at a laptop and my work computer at the journal office, the sound is better on the laptop. I don't know.
Okay, good to know. Number 2, economic development / tourism.
We hired Margaret Morera. We got funding from NDIT to hire someone to come in and do economic development, and also funding for projects and things that we felt would help with that. So we've done 2 videos so far, which have gone over. The first one was specifically to promote the hotel study that we had done a couple of years ago, which has generated a lot of interest. Not just hotels, but people looking, at Ashcroft more generally. So we've done a more general video, sort of encouraging people to come to Ashcroft, to, not just if you want to build a hotel, but any kind of business, any entrepreneurs, any business people, just promoting it as a Four Seasons community, a hub community. And those have gone over very well. We've done things like look at signage, advertising brochures, We do radio advertising on Kamloops radio stations in September. And so that's been really good, particularly with COVID, because it's able to help. Like we did the Plaid Friday shopping promotion in Ashcroft, and I think the total number of receipts that people brought in, if you spent more than $50, you could bring in your receipts on that day and get a really nice canvas tote bag. And people brought in $4,700 worth of receipts.
Wow.
And that's just the people who brought them in. So that's $4,700 spent at our local businesses, and that's a fraction probably of what got spent that day.
Well, I know I spent some money on some cinnamon buns. That's
Yes,
for
you did.
sure. Okay. So yeah, no, that's awesome. And Margaret's been doing a great job.
Yeah.
So number 1, community to community forum protocol agreement with AIB.
We signed a protocol agreement in the spring with the Ashcroft Indian Band, and we would like to have made more of a big deal, but we couldn't because of COVID. Again, we would have liked to have more of a ceremony than, well, we had no ceremony, which was really a shame, but we've been talking to them about a number of things. One of them is supplying potable water to the Ashcroft Band, which has been the subject of discussion between a number of councils and the band over many years now. And we're hoping to, one of our strategic priorities is to move ahead next year, which starts on Friday, which is hard to believe. Starting next year, we're going to be working on a trails master plan. And one thing we'd like to work with the AIB with is, and they're very keen on this too, is establishing walking trails or paths between Ashcroft and the band. Because right now, if you want to walk or bike between here and there, you have to go along Cornwall Road, which isn't necessarily the best road, and it's not horribly scenic. There are much more attractive routes that you could take that are safer, that don't involve people walking on the shoulder of a road with a few blind corners on it. So that's something we'd like to do to connect Ashcroft with the band, because they've got the 2 softball fields with a lovely walking trail all around those. So that would really make a nice way of integrating the 2 communities and connecting them.
Right. I personally quite like that look over the plateaus and the river. But
It is a nice.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it is a nice look. I mean, when you come to, especially if you're coming down and you come around that bend past Angie's old place, and then you kind of, it opens up there and you see the river and you see the town and everything, and you get the big vista. That really is lovely. But then just above that, you've got the few twists up there. It's really icy in the wintertime because it doesn't get the sun. I know Daniel Collett got into a bad accident there a couple of winters ago in his car on the icy pavement.
Right.
So, it'd be nice to have something that maybe goes up behind the Spy House and goes up more through the reserve there and takes you through the grasslands.
Well, hey. So that is it for the villages, both Cache Creek and Ashcroft's top 10.
Yep.
We're just going to do a little quick current event thing here. So this is an important notice from the Hub Society. They say that School District 74's Board of Trustees, regular meeting, item 7.8, discussion of the disposal process for former AES, or Ashcroft Elementary School, building/property, which is now the Ashcroft Hub. So the date of this meeting, or whether this is going to be brought up first, is January 5th, not 2010, which it says, yep. Water is across the hall in the water bucket. Barbara will be right back. This is live, folks. This is live. Oh, actually, Barbara,
Yes.
there's water right
Yes.
right there. January 5th, 2021. So to join the webinar, there is a code that you can click on with a passcode, or you can join by phone at 778-907-2071. So what they're asking for is members from the public are encouraged to show their support for the Hub by joining this meeting or sending letters/emails to School District 74 Board of Education, trustees, and/or school board office in Ashcroft. There is currently no information about this on the school board Facebook page. I haven't seen anything from them about this specifically, other than the fact that this is in the agenda for their next meeting. So This might just be them talking about it as they sort of have to talk about it kind of thing. We don't know for sure yet. But if you're looking to show your support for the Ashcroft Hub, by all means, join this meeting, which is a public event and will be shown on the Hub Online Network as well. Welcome back, Barbara.
Hello.
So that is the sort of a little piece of current events that is going on right now. And again, if you're watching, give us a call, 250-457-0538. You can tell us something that went well for you in 2020, or a challenge that you might have overcome, or just a challenge that you had in general. Give us a call. We would love to hear from you. All right, what else do you have on your list?
I've got other things. TNRD.
Okay.
Because TNRD, it's important for people to know you pay taxes to the TNRD. So what are they doing for you? One of the things they are doing for us this year coming up is they will be doing renovations and upgrades to the interior of the Ashcroft Library. Now, the Ashcroft Library was built in 1975 at its current location on Brink Street, Second and Brink. And over the years, they've done a lot of work to the exterior, new roofing and sidings and everything. They have done relatively little to the interior. It's been painted over the years. But structurally, if you walk into there now, it's as it was in 1975.
Right.
And so what they did is they did a survey of people who use the library. Interestingly, there are a fair number of people from Cache Creek who also use the Ashcroft Library. Because the two libraries are open different hours. They're not open identical hours in Ashcroft and Cache Creek. So between the two, you can use both. Of course, if you have a library card, you can use any library in the system.
Right.
So they asked people, what do you use the library for? What would you like to see? One of the things people said they wanted to see, if possible, is more natural light in the interior. Improved, I think, computer access was another one. There is a big room at the back which is currently used for storage, which was originally, if you see the original blueprint, which I have, was originally the head librarian's office. And it hasn't been used as that for a long time, so they've used it as storage. So one of the things they're thinking about is, can we find somewhere else to store what's in there? And can we open that up somehow and turn that into more space, whether it's a meeting room or whether it's an extension of the library? So it's going to be interesting. I mean, best practices in libraries have changed a lot in the last 45 years. And it's going to be really nice to see what they come up with for the interior of the library.
Right.
Another thing, TNRD, is Eco Depot.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. What's happening with the Eco Depot? Well, of course, in last year, so 2019, we're at that weird kind of not quite 1 year, not quite the next. We're on the cusp here. So when I say last year, I make sure it was 2019. The TNRD announced that they had chosen a site at Boston Flats. And there was a lot of opposition to that site. So that sent them off to do surveys, and they did presentations in Ashcroft and Cache Creek. And they finally purchased a property, Campbell Hill Road East, which is on the old Waste Tech headquarters site there. And they ran into some issues, archaeological issues, which is a major issue in this entire region. And so that set them back a little bit, but the plan is to have the new Eco Depot built and operating hopefully by the end of summer next year, 2021.
Okay.
So if you think of summer as being June through September, which it is seasonally, so hopefully by the end of September we'll see the new Eco Depot. It will be built to suit Ashcroft-Cache Creek. It means you do no longer have to take your stuff up the hill to the transfer station where it is now. You'll be able to take all your recycling there, all your, tires, everything, as well as any garbage that you have. So if you've got old armchairs or you've been doing some renos or whatever it is you've got, it's going to be your one-stop shop.
One of the first videos that we did as the Hub Online Network was to go and film. We did a quick interview with a gentleman that was doing the presentations for that. So you can go check that out at the very start of what we were doing. Go to the Hub Online Network YouTube channel today.
Okay. So
I'm just plugging us as much as I can here.
so that's it for the TNRD here in Ashcroft and Cache Creek is the Ashcroft Library and the new Eco Depot.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. It's going to be nice to see that Echo, there are a lot of people, not happy with the present site up the side of the mountain there. So this one's much more level, easier access from both communities.
No, that'll be cool. I haven't even looked at the. Oh, we have our first caller.
Yay!
Hello, you're talking to the Hub Online Network.
Yeah, hello there. It's Chris Roden.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going fine, thank you. I just wanted to comment on the proposal that's coming up before the school board on January 5th
Okay.
and say how vital it is that anyone who has any caring at all for the hub contacts the local trustee or their own trustees to ask them to...
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, you have us on in the background.
Yeah, I've got you on in the background.
So to ask them to postpone the decision? Oops. Thank you. Hello?
Hello?
Hang on.
Okay.
Probably trying to figure out how to turn off his computer sound.
Oh, you have a
Sorry, ask them to ask them to for this proposal to be delayed.
Okay.
And I know we're in an unfortunate position because our local trustee Vicky Trill has to recuse herself.
Yeah.
But the others don't have to.
But I think that our next closest person is Carmen Ranta.
Yes, in Cache Creek. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. But what I would particularly be worried about. Ask them to add for this proposal to be delayed.
Okay.
That's why you turn your radio off when you're on the radio.
Because our local trustee, Vicky Trill, has to recuse herself.
But the others don't have.
No, the others don't have to, but
Christopher, turn your thing off.
hang on. The fact is, what I'd be worried about is that the other trustees really have no concern for Ashcroft.
Okay.
I mean, we saw how they treated the petition that was put forward about the renaming of Desert Hills Community School.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had a petition of couple of hundred people there, and it was completely ignored. We have to resist closure of the hub.
Yeah.
God knows how it's done. Heaven knows how much it's going to cost to keep the place open. I mean, I heard when I was on the school board 4 years ago, we had discussions about why Ashcroft Elementary should close, and there was a suggestion put forward that re-roofing was going to cost in excess of $300,000. Now, I don't know whether any studies have been done since then, but I really hope the school board brings some figures forward when they make this presentation on the 5th of January.
Well, not putting any words into Vicky Trill's mouth, I don't want to speak on her behalf. My understanding is that she is looking for funding for that upgrade as well as other upgrades to the building specifically at this time. So I'm not sure if she has secured anything or where she's looking to get funding from, but I believe that is something that she has in her sights at the moment.
Well, that's good.
So, but
okay. Anyway, just wanted to throw my 2 pennies in.
And I appreciate that
on that, and because it is important. The hub has become a vital, well, if you want another word for it, hub for our community, and it would be tragic to lose it.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Well, thank you very much for phoning, Christopher, and I appreciate you
guys,
watching.
Not a problem. Take care.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Nice. Yeah, no, for sure. And if Vicky, if you're watching, give us a call and maybe you can set me straight on that particular issue. Otherwise, I will report on that in the new year.
Okay.
But yeah, I believe that she's looking for some kind of funding for the roof. So yeah, I love having people phone in. That was fun. When when all this side tangent. When all this started, I have bosses in Ontario, and I would ask people to phone, and then someone would phone in, and I would get super excited. And so now I have these meetings with my boss, and she's like, "I just love how you get excited when people phone." So anyway, where were we?
We had finished talking about the Eco Depot, and I have on my notes here to move on to, because we're getting broader now, at BC.
Okay.
And the big thing in BC this year, snap election.
Snap
I
election.
can't snap my fingers, so I'll have to let you do that for me. Snap election, and it was in some ways the worst kept secret in BC. I mean, everyone was talking about, there's going to be a snap election. We just don't quite know when, and then the hammer dropped on the 21st of September. But of course, the week before that, here in Fraser-Nicola, we had another controversy regarding the Fraser-Nicola NDP. That's just a gift that keeps on giving. And so there was a controversy over their candidate choice, Aaron Shumahetsa, who had run unsuccessfully for the nomination against Harry Lally in 2016-17, which is a really convoluted story that frankly makes my head hurt to think about it. But anyway, so he lost to Harry Lally then, and he was put forward as he filed his nomination papers, and everything seemed to be structured in such a way that he was the only candidate.
Right.
And so the riding executive for Fraser-Nicola NDP resigned en masse, all 13 of them, and because they were upset that at what they saw as the shoehorning of the preferred candidate by the provincial NDP. And then
There's a pun in there. The Shumahetsaine?
shoehorning.
Shoehorning? Sorry. Aaron, I'm sorry.
But
That's bad.
So I mean, the dust really, literally, it's, if you think of Pigpen in the Charlie Brown cartoons, and there's always that cloud of dust, and it kind of goes down and then it comes up again. The dust on this one was still hovering there in the air, and then the election was called.
Right.
And interestingly, one of the riding executive who resigned in high dudgeon over this ran as an independent in Fraser-Nicola, and got, I think, under 1,000 votes. 900 and some odd votes, and
You keep talking, I'll look that up.
and Jackie Taggart for the Liberals ended up winning the riding by 300. So those votes that went to that particular independent candidate, if they had gone to Mr. Shumahetsa instead, he would now be our MLA. Probably. So it's just an interesting the way that falls out, that this happens in the NDP party, and then there's a snap election, and who knows how much the candidate was hurt by this controversy happening so close to the election.
Okay, so Jackie Taggart got 5,696 votes. Aaron Shumahetsa got 5,414. So Jackie beat him by 200.
284.
Yeah, 284. So Dennis Adamson is the person in talks here. He got 438 votes, and Mike Bangu got 343.
Yeah, so between the two of them, they got about 800 votes.
Yeah.
So if those 800 votes had gone to Mr. Shumahetsa, he wins.
If either of them
Yes,
didn't run and all of their votes went to Aaron Shumahetsa,
he's our MLA.
he would have won.
So
Yeah, so that was having, again, being new to this job. I'd never covered an election before. I didn't. I wasn't. We hadn't started this last time. So it was very interesting for me, and we almost had a snap election both provincially and federally.
Yes.
Twice federally, almost.
And now the talk for federally is spring election.
Oh.
Spring 2021. That I'm not a betting person, and I'm not the best source here, but the smart money seems to be on federally going to the polls in spring of 2021.
Okay.
So.
So all that being said, there is a lot of provincial controversy with the Liberals themselves, a lot of separate
shooting themselves in the foot. Yeah.
separate incidences with separate things, poorly speaking on Zoom calls, et cetera, et cetera. The big things that happened here were the sort of promises that were made by both Jackie Taggart and Aaron Shumahetsa. The rest of them didn't really have a big thing for Ashcroft. The Green Party didn't go, Ashcroft is going to get
No.
thing. So Jackie Taggart mentioned money for the Maccabee fossil beds, which now that she's won. Maybe you can clear this up for me. So she's won. Is she now going to, like, is that a thing that she's capable of producing?
No. That was if the Liberals got into power.
Okay.
And so she won election here in Fraser-Nicola. The Liberals did not form government.
Okay.
So she can go to the NDP and say, this is a proposal that we wanted to do. We think you should do it.
Right.
I think they should do it, personally. But it's not binding. And it's not binding even if the NDP promise it and they form government, which it's not binding. I mean, people make campaign promises all the time and nothing ever happens with them. So the campaign promise they made was, or Mr. Shumahetsa made, and here we have, he did not become the MLA, but the NDP did form government. He said they would get our emergency department open 24/7. And I read a comment recently on Facebook where someone said they were doing a little bit of bashing of Jackie Taggart and saying, oh, well, the NDP said they'd do this. Well, you can say a lot of things. I could say I'm going to fly to the moon tomorrow. That doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. So to say we'll get Ashcroft Emergency Department open 24/7 and to actually do it, huge gulf. If it was easy to do, it would have been done a long time ago. If there was an easy solution, there are so many things needed to keep that emergency department open 24/7. It's not just doctors, it's nurses, it's x-ray technicians, it's lab technicians. It's not something that can be solved by throwing money at the problem. That's not the issue. The issue is largely the staffing. And where do we get staff from? We are competing with almost every other place in the province in terms of getting healthcare professionals to our community.
Right.
And so when at the time there was a lot of talk about, oh, well, Jackie Taggart's promised money for the Maccabee Fossil. I'd rather see the hospital open. Opening the Maccabee fossil beds and promoting that as a huge international attraction when people are allowed to travel again, the business plan for that conservatively said it would attract 50,000 people a year. That is what's going to help us get more healthcare professionals moving here, because with 50,000 visitors a year coming to something that's on our doorstep, we're going to get more businesses in Ashcroft and Cache Creek.
Right.
The businesses that are here will be able to expand, longer hours, more employees, more whatever. If you offer more products and more services and more businesses and more things for people to do, you're more likely to attract people who want to come and live in your area. So that's what gets more healthcare people here. If it was easy to get healthcare people here, I mean, I know people, our RCMP officers who've moved here or been transferred here in the course of duty, and they say Ashcroft is the best kept secret in the province. They love it. And people who come here really love it. It's trying to get the people here, trying to get them to move away from the Lower Mainland or from Victoria or from the Kootenays or wherever it is they're from. So, you know, the economic spin-offs of something like Maccabee fossil beds are going to help the whole region. And they're going to help us do so much more than just open the Maccabee fossil beds and have people go there. It's
Right.
going to have huge ripple. I mean, think about Historic-Cache Creek. The same people who are going to come here to go to a Maccabee fossil beds are going to be interested in going to see Historic-Cache Creek.
Yep.
The two just go together. That's the same, you're attracting the same people. Would they come here just to see Historic-Cache Creek? Maybe. Would they come here to see both? Yeah.
Well, that gives people something to do over 2 days, right? And especially if you throw in Horstings or Desert Hills,
Yeah.
that kind of thought process. That's, yeah, totally.
Yep.
Of all the many interviews that I've done over the last year, I've never been speechless until Aaron Shumahetsa said, "We're gonna have a 24/7 hospital." I, I remember sitting there going, "That's a very big promise."
That's a big promise. That it is, and I'd love to see one. I remember when we did have one. Lots of people who live here remember it. One of my mom's sisters, her husband came here as an anesthetist, as a young fellow, just graduated. I think it was his first or second job. He was at the Lady Minto Hospital, and it was down where the village office is now. He loved it. He absolutely loved it. He loved working at the hospital there. He loved the lifestyle. He was an avid fisherman. So yeah, that it's goes back a long way, having a 24/7 hospital here, not just emergency, but a hospital. It's something, would we all love to see it again? Absolutely. Is it going to be easy to do? No. Not going to be easy.
As a journalist, what was a highlight of yours throughout the election process?
Throughout the election process, well, I guess, as I said, the whole Fraser-Nicola NDP controversy, which was deja vu all over again in a lot of ways. I think, to me, it was just, the thing that struck me the most about it was the fact that it was so unnecessary. Really, going to the polls in a pandemic, when you don't have to, when all the parties were working together fairly harmoniously, I think that it was completely unnecessary. It was a cynical grab for a majority government.
I'm surprised. I mean, as much as I try to keep my personal feelings out, I'm surprised it worked. But I don't know if
they'd done a good job with the pandemic, especially relative to other jurisdictions that were much in the news. Dr. Bonnie Henry, even though she is not a part of the government, she is nonpartisan. She is associated with a lot of people with the NDP party. So that, I think, helped. Her popularity helped. And as you mentioned, the Liberals, I think Mr. Wilkinson was not the right person to be leading a party at that time. And you had a couple of very unfortunate incidents of people making, candidates making unfortunate comments and being in the news for the wrong reasons. There is such a thing as bad publicity.
And it did seem to be all Liberals. That's sort of what it felt like.
Yeah, there were the two big incidents. Jane Thornthwaite from North Vancouver and her comments on that Zoom call, and then the Laurie Throness in the Fraser Valley making comments about eugenics. Yeah, the NDP, there were no equivalent gaffes on the NDP side. So either there was nothing there to find or they're just more disciplined. One of the two. So, there were none of those sort of fires that had to be put out on the NDP side, and that really helps. If you're running an election and you're not having to put out fires, you're allowed to concentrate on the things to get yourself reelected. You're not trying to deal with doing damage control. And the NDP didn't have to do that.
I quite enjoyed the partnership that you and I had throughout the whole thing, where we did the group, what's the word I'm looking for? Of forum, open house. I'm not saying it right.
Oh, on election night?
No. The group.
Oh, the all candidates.
All candidates meeting. Yes, thank you.
Yes, that was good. That was really good.
And then our 4-hour session on election night itself was fun.
Oh my goodness. I filed my last copy that night at the Journal. I went back to the office and 1:45.
Wow.
I got home.
That's the nice thing about these videos is once it's up,
It's done. Exactly. I think I picked the wrong career in journalism. No, it was an interesting night. I've been an election junkie for ages and ages, and to me it's just fun to watch all the different ifs and might have beens, would have, could have, should have beens. Yeah. So who knows? We might get another fix in the spring.
hey. What else do you have for the province?
That was a COVID response and support for small businesses and tourism. I think the province's COVID response was pretty good, all things considered. You're making a lot of this stuff up on the fly, which is not generally showing governments at
Yeah,
their
we
best.
have enough movies by now to know exactly how to deal with this stuff, though. Have we not watched Contagion? Have we not watched The Stand? Have we not watched
Yes.
Outbreak?
Yeah,
Come on, people.
Unfortunately, things are much neater and tidier in fiction than they are in real life, and governments are not designed to do things on the fly. That's not how governments work. You know, no one ever complained about governments doing things too fast, and there's a reason why people never complain about that, because it doesn't happen. So when you think of entities that can nimbly pivot on a dime, governments do not come to mind as things that can do that. And they had to do that. And some governments did it better than others. I think that in the next little while, now that we're into the winter and well into the shoulder season or the dead season, support for what the province does to support the tourism industry specifically is going to be crucial, because I was on a phone call with Selena Robinson when she was Minister of Municipal Affairs before the election. And she mentioned the new normal. COVID was the new normal. And I said, I'm sorry, I've lost track of which new normal we're on here now in our region, because we were told after 2017 that was the new normal, and then the flooding and landslides and mudslides was the new normal. So I make this as the third new normal, maybe? I don't know. Is my math off here? So this, and again, this, writing my year in review column, so many of the things I'm still writing about are as a direct result of 2017 and the wildfires.
Right.
That is still 3.5 years on, affecting this area, affecting businesses, organizations, people. Now we've layered COVID on top of that. And so many businesses that were just starting to rebound after 2017 got wham, they got hit again. So support of this sector is going to be huge in the next few months. And it can't happen in May. It has to happen soon to allow these businesses to be able to figure out what they're going to do for 2021 for their tourist season. I mean, Ashcroft-Cache Creek has said, we are opening in 2021. Don't ask what that's going to look like, because we don't know, because it's going to depend so much on what state we're at with COVID, with orders, health orders, etc. Because a lot of businesses decided to shut down this past summer, 2020, they can't do that again.
No.
They do not have that, and it's not even a luxury. They don't have that option. That's not on the table anymore. And so the government is really going to have to help out and look to see things that are going to help this industry, the tourism industry, which is not only a backbone of the province, but is such a huge backbone in regions like ours.
Speaking of government helping out, if you haven't already applied for your benefit, your $500 or $1,000 benefit from the BC government, don't forget to do so. You do have to apply for it. You don't just get it. So go onto the Government of BC website and follow all the links and stuff and fill all that stuff out. So I applied for mine early last week. I still haven't heard from them.
Yeah.
But anyway, hopefully soon.
Well, my son applied. He's already had his. I tried yesterday. It was my first time trying to get in there, and I got in on my first try.
Yep.
And took 5 minutes to fill out. I mean, everything was assembled. I mean, not that you have to assemble tons of stuff, but I had everything there, so it took me 5 minutes. So.
Do you have anything for the country?
Country, well, a possibility of snap election, the We Charity scandal. I don't know.
What I love, so with my job, everything has to be tangible. Like if there's a story about the provincial government or the federal government, it has to be tangible and relatable to Ashcroft.
Okay.
Okay. So the We Charity thing was one that we're
hoping to get funding through to hire someone.
Well, no, that's next point. That we talked about this every episode of the news because it was ongoing for a long time. And my bosses in Ontario were like, why are you covering this? I don't understand why you are talking about that specific thing. But we were because, go ahead.
Because the Ashcroft Hub was going to apply to that funding for a summer student.
Yep.
And that was going to be funded by the We charity, and then the whole scandal blew up, and there was no money to fund anyone to do anything, the hub or anyone else. So lots of people lost out on that one. It was huge. It's going to be interesting to see if our Teflon Prime Minister continues to have this stuff roll off him, or whether it is actually something, whether something is going to stick.
You know,
And come back and finally be the smoking gun that gets him, for those who want to get him.
for myself, and I have no opinion. It doesn't matter who this happens to, but there's so many things that you hear about in the larger media that is, this person's done this, or that person's done this thing, or this group of people, right? And nothing ever happens. Mm-hmm. These people need to go to jail, or they're going to go to jail, or we're going to get them. And they never do, ever. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's just I'm always flabbergasted by nothing ever.
Well, I mean,
there's no outcome.
In 2016, it was President Trump, now President Trump, soon to be former President Trump, with his Access Hollywood tape and women, I grab them by the whatever, they let me do that because I'm famous. And everyone was, oh, that's it. That's it. That's sunk him as a candidate. Well, goes to show how wrong you can be. And so, throughout, and that sort of segues into the United States and the 2020 election, which does have fallout for the entire world. And it's going to be something that people are going to be writing books about in 50 years' time. Definitely, people are still writing books about Watergate and showing how Watergate, which was 1975, is still influencing U.S. politics and how things work today. This year's presidential election is going to be exactly the same. People are going to be writing books about it in 50 years as more and more still comes out, and they see how its tentacles filter down and affect every facet of American life and elections. And of course, the tie-in to this area is softwood lumber. Hopefully, with another president who's not quite as whatever President Trump is, lots of words I could use here, not quite as intransigent on foreign trade and foreign relations. President Biden hopefully will be more willing to listen to Canada, more willing to act in good faith with us, and hopefully the softwood lumber question can be resolved. It's one of those ones that just keeps festering. And you think you've got it solved, and then it erupts about 3 years later. So hopefully that's something, because that affects BC more than any other province. When they talk about the softwood lumber deal with Canada, you could really put British Columbia and the rest of Canada, because we're predominantly the province that gets affected by that. But no, the U.S. Election and COVID response. I mean, we've talked a lot about various jurisdictions' COVID response. We are seeing in the States what happens when you abdicate all responsibility. When the person at the top takes no responsibility for what goes on, that's what happens. You get 335,000 people dead, and you have hospitals in California right now which are telling people basically, you think COVID doesn't affect you if you don't get COVID? We're having to turn people away from hospitals now, so heaven forbid you have a heart attack or go into cardiac arrest or something, because if you come to a hospital, they're all filled with COVID people.
Right.
And that's in California, which up until now had done a fairly decent job. But no, you've got just a president who took no responsibility, who didn't listen to health officials, who didn't listen to science, who contradicted, top medical officials like Dr. Anthony Fauci. He's advised, I don't know how many, 27 million presidents. He's the top epidemiologist in the United States. And he would say, this is in my expert opinion, and they don't come much more expert than him, this is what you should do. And the president would go, no, we're not doing that. You're just scaring people. And it ties back to what I said about having to be the person who stands up and says, I'm going to give you the bad news. You will not be able to have Christmas this year. And that's a tough thing to do. And he just wasn't willing to do that. So that was their COVID response. And then the other one was Great Britain, Brexit. And I guess the tie-in to here is, my own son has dual British Canadian citizenship because his father is British. And when he was younger, I used to say to him, if you ever want to go work in the European Union, like not just Great Britain, but anywhere in the EU, with your UK passport, you can go anywhere. You don't have to worry about work visas. You don't have to worry about only staying for 6 months.
That's cool.
And so many people, so many kids throughout the world who have that dual citizenship, that freedom has been taken away from them. It's gone now. They can still go back to the UK and work there or live there if they want to, study there. But that broader world beyond the United Kingdom, it has been taken away. And, you know, is the UK going to turn to Canada to try and hammer out some kind of now trade deal with us, because they haven't really had to before. They're no good at doing trade deals. They haven't had to do one since about 1972. So that's going to be a huge story in the middle of a pandemic, too. So that's just, you know, Brexit is just adding insult to injury.
I got to plug in a phone. What are some of the funnest stories that you had to... This will sort of be the last main topic that we talk about.
The funnest stories of 2020.
For you, like as a journalist,
The Cardboardonians.
what are some of the things that you thought were just fun?
Cardboardonians were fun. That was a fun day. The kids really enjoyed it. So many adults really got into it too. So they were really having fun. The anticipation on the kids' faces as the Cardboardonians arrived and they saw what was happening and they got into the battle. That was a lot of fun. Another fun one was the Easter scavenger hunt that we had here in Ashcroft, where people drove around and they found the houses with the different clues, you know, flamingos at one and the Christmas moose at another one. And there were all organized by Joyce Buckland and Phyllis Rainey, and people stepped up with some fantastic prizes. I think everyone who took part got a prize. And that was a lot of fun. Just people thinking outside the box. Santa coming to town. There was no Santa parade, but Santa came to town. And people really stepped up. So I really missed... I mean, in this week's paper, I write about how there's a rhythm to my life as a small-town journalist. If it's April, it's the Ashcroft Art Show. If it's May, it's the Clinton Ball. If it's June, it's Graffiti Days. If it's August, it's Desert Days. So it's like the seasons. And this year, all gone. So
Desert Days happened.
Desert Days happened, but you know, I look forward to going down to Spence's Bridge. And this year it was virtual, and a lot of people really pivoted, there's that word again, to put their things online, whether it's Desert Days or whether it was St. Albans Church doing their things on the Hub Online Network, whether it was the Sage Sound Singers filming their virtual Christmas concert. People did a really great job of that. But people really stepped up with things like the physically distanced Easter scavenger hunt, the having Santa come to town, the drive-bys for grad, the drive-bys for people's birthdays, and special events. The Cram the Cruiser up in Clinton still went ahead. Toys for Joys happened here. People made sure that stuff still happened. You know, people didn't just throw up their hands in despair and say, well, that's it. Let's just cancel 2020 and we'll try again next year. People said, yeah, it's really bad that we have to cancel so many great things, but what can we do instead?
Right.
How can we, fill some of these gaps and replace some of these things, just for the short term? I mean, no one's saying this is going to be a permanent fix, but it's, all right, how do we deal with this situation right now? What can we do? Let's do an Easter scavenger hunt. How can we make it safe? And people sat down and brainstormed and made it safe and made it happen. So, and some of these things might become traditions. You know, we might have an Easter scavenger hunt every year because people found it a lot of fun. You know, who knows? The Cardboardonians might return.
I know nothing about that as of yet. I have not got any threats in the mail like I did during that whole thing.
So let's hope they've retreated back up into the mountains and we'll never see them or hear from them again.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
For myself, I'm going to say some of the things that were more controversial this year were some of the more arguments around the office over certain things, meaning there was some stuff that happened with the Cache Creek Council that were moderately, not dubious, that's not the word I'm looking for, but argumentative is a word. And so at work, we were like, no, I agree with this, or I agree with that, or if you see it in this light, it makes more sense. So a lot of some interesting things happen with the Cache Creek Council. I really enjoyed doing my interviews or the election coverage with you. I enjoyed doing the interviews with all of the council members that were willing to do it. And I'm looking at you, Marilyn Anderson, and Jonah Anstit, who have not come on, as well as Annette Pittman. Come on, guys. Get on the show. 2021, let's do this. I need to get my whole set of people so I can start over with
Collect
Mayor.
the whole set.
Right? I enjoyed my interviews with Deb Arnott, Jim Martell, and the Dan Collette, as well as Pat Kinvig for the Slough Society and the Terminal story that's been going on. So it's been a very busy year. Those are just some highlights, and you can go check out all of these things on the Hub Online Network YouTube channel. Funnest stories that I've covered are probably Royden Josephson's art gallery. That was an interesting one to go check out. I wasn't here for the Carbodonians, but it's just been mainly everything's just been COVID. But those are some of the highlights. So go check that out. I'm looking forward to 2021. Do you have any big things happening in 2021?
Things I'm looking forward to. Looking forward to seeing my son again.
Oh, there you go.
At some point. Go over to Penticton and see my parents, Bill and Heather. Those are two personal things. Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to a more normal summer. I suspect the winter and spring will be a lot more of the same of what we've had for the last 9-10 months. But I think by summer, I'm hoping we're going to start seeing more of a return to normal. So, yeah.
Awesome. For everybody at home, if you are interested in giving a random act of kindness, you can still email us. Send an email to honmanager@ashcrofthub.com. What is a random act of kindness? Well, you can let us know who you would like to give a random act of kindness to, what you would like to give this person as a random act of kindness, and a little reason as to why, and we will present them with a gift on your behalf, but it'll be anonymous. So we've already done a few of these things. We're going to have a bit of a supercut of ones that we've already done. We have shown a few of them already in previous shows, but the other day we went and handed out a bunch to people at their homes. So please get those into us so we can end this year with some positive thoughts and start the year off with some positive stuff. And yeah, so thank you all very much. There's going to be no more New Year's stuff from us. This is it for the rest of the year. Going to take the next couple of days to just sort of recoup and see where things go. Anything else you'd like to say, Barbara?
I want to make a TV recommendation.
Please do.
Everyone's looking for stuff to binge watch, and you've watched Tiger King, which I never watched and never will.
I did not watch that either.
I know it as a thing that exists in the zeitgeist, and that's all I want to know about it, really. I did watch The Queen's Gambit, which is very, very good. Makes chess really sexy and interesting. And the chess looked really real. I know from reading interviews with a couple of the actors that they don't really play chess, but they had Boris Kasparov, the great Russian grandmaster.
The guy that lost to Deep Blue?
Yes, they had him advise about how players move, like how they move the pieces, how they interact with the board, with each other, etc. So that he said, I wanted to make it look good to people who know chess. I wanted them for it to look real. And it's a gripping story. It's incredibly well acted. But the series that I discovered in 2020 that I would highly recommend to everyone and anyone is called The Detectorists. And it's about two young, middle-aged fellows in England who go metal detecting. And that's what they do. They live in a little town called Danebury.
Is this like a reality show?
No, it's written by Mackenzie Crook, who starred in the British version of The Office. and he plays one of the two detectorists. The other is played by the great Toby Jones. And they look like ordinary people, and they go out metal detecting, always hoping for that big find, that big, big find. And they talk about stuff. They talk about their romances in their lives, or maybe not in their lives, depending. They talk about their family. They talk about the everyday stuff that we talk about, and it is gentle and laugh out loud funny and genuinely moving, and just the most beautiful, heartfelt series. There are only 3 series and a Christmas special. Each episode is only 26 minutes long. You could watch the whole thing easily in a day. And it is beautiful. And it is just the most wonderful. It was made between, I think the last series was made in 2017 or 2018. Diana Rigg, the late great Diana Rigg's in it. That's another reason to watch it. Even though it's a fairly new show, it has already become one of the top 5 most beloved TV shows in Britain of all time.
Okay.
So it's right up there with Fawlty Towers in terms of beloved. People who watch it, I've read so many people say, I finished watching the last episode and I went back and started watching it all over again. It is just the most wonderful series. The detectorists, everyone can watch it. And it sounds like it should be the most boring thing in the world, and it absolutely is not. Perfect antidote for 2020.
Wonderful. I'll have to go check that out.
Yep.
Do I have anything off the top of my head movie-wise? Positive movie-wise? Ooh, all of the movies I watched recently are like horror movies or Marvel movies or Star Wars movies. So, no.
Okay. I haven't watched any new movies at all for ages. I think the last new movie I saw in the cinema was Spectre, James Bond.
Oh, well, last movie I saw in theater was Tenet,
Oh, okay.
where things go backwards and forwards.
Yes.
It's out on DVD. Check that. You know what? Check that one out. If you're at home, that's a good one. Christopher Nolan, make you think. It's not as good as Interstellar or Batman, but it was all right.
Yeah.
So give it a check out. And otherwise, have yourselves all a fantastic New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone, and all the best. Celebrate safely, and see you all in 2021.
Right on. Thank you again, Barbara, for coming in.
Thank you, Gareth.